Our guest today is one of the Conservative leadership candidates we are proud to welcome. He is the MP for, I'm like right beside this, right, so I hope I don't screw it up. Hastings, Frontenac, Lennox, and Addington.
No.
Hastings, Lennox, and Addington.
That's it.
Okay.
You got it.
Frontenac was probably the old, would it have included the old one?
I think so. It was in there somewhere.
Yeah, so let's welcome Mr. Derek Sloan to the show.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
And I'm sorry about screwing up the name of your riding.
That's one thing about MPs. They always like their riding to be mentioned and mentioned correctly. I was many a time introduced as the MP for Muskoka Parry Sound, and I always corrected it because it was Parry Sound Muskoka. If you didn't correct it, then Parry Sound would be mighty torqued off. So I understand why Derek might want us to know that it is Hastings, Lennox, and Addington riding. So welcome to the program. You want to start off, Jodie, or shall I, or what?
No, I was just going to get Derek, ease into this by asking Derek about face masks, because we actually, believe it or not, obviously it's a timely thing. We joked about it off air about having to wear one while doing an interview. But Derek, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this whole face mask situation, mandatory face masks, because it does seem it's very polarizing. You're on one side or the other. There is no gray area. And we actually had an email from a listener, Dan, who wanted me to ask Derek about face masks.
Yeah.
So what comes to mind? What do you feel about face masks?
Well, I think mandatory face masks are unnecessary. I think if people want to wear them, that's fine. It seems a little draconian to me, and I don't want to downplay people's fears, but it seems a little bit over the top, particularly in the land of the free over here.
So if you go out to Walmart, Derek, with the mandatory, I'm assuming you're going to say yes, you're going to be wearing a mask, but would you prefer not to, or are you fine? Look, I'll wear a mask regardless.
Well, I haven't been wearing a mask. No, I haven't been in public in large, with lots of crowds very often. I've been to Walmart a couple of times, but I haven't been wearing a mask. Now that we have in my riding, both counties in my riding are now doing mandatory masks. So I will obviously, follow through on that. But before that, no, I wasn't.
And full disclosure, Derek's children and my children go to the same school, and I saw your family at Walmart. They were all wearing masks a couple weeks ago. Myself and my daughter were not. And actually, my daughter said there's, from her class, I won't say the name, but so your whole family was wearing masks, kids included, which I thought was pretty impressive.
And you were being the rebel there.
Well, he wasn't. Yeah, I was.
Yeah,
Derek wasn't even around.
No.
Yeah. I was pulling an Andrew Scheer.
That's right. Yeah, he was caught out there at Pearson Airport. So
Derek, let's talk about the race to date. I'd be curious. If we're being completely honest, coming out of the gates, you took a lot of heat on some issues. I'd be interested to know. That seems to have died down quite a bit. I'd be interested to know your take on the race so far from your perspective and how you feel you've done.
Well, I think I've exceeded expectations on all fronts. Nobody thought I could raise the money to get in, and of course we've raised a significant amount of money. I expect that we'll raise $1 million before all is said and done. Obviously there's been some controversial issues, but it was my intention getting into this race to prove that we can't shy away from controversy. It doesn't necessarily mean that we go looking for it, but we have to stand our ground as Conservatives. And I hope I've been an example of the type of message that I'm preaching.
You took a strong stand early on against the World Health Organization and the United Nations more generally. And I want to go on the record to say I'm very disappointed in the WHO and some of the positions they took and some of the advice that they took, and then went back on the advice and saying that China was doing a great job containing COVID and all of those kinds of things. And then we had the debacle of Justin Trudeau spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get a temporary seat on the Security Council, the UN Security Council, which had Canada coming in third in that race. So I bet you feel a little bit vindicated at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, I think now nobody questions the fact that the World Health Organization messed up. that Dr. Theresa Tam was giving us inappropriate advice. So yeah, I feel pretty good. I rarely get criticized about this anymore, and I'm glad to have raised that issue when I did.
Is there a globalist conspiracy, and is Justin Trudeau part of it?
Well, I think that's a little bit simplified. I mean, certainly there's international organizations that do not operate with Canada's best interest at heart. Their organizations like the World Health Organization seem to be unduly influenced by communist China. I don't think there's anything anyone can argue with that. And Justin Trudeau buys into this. Whether he's doing it with a sinister intention or just out of complete naivety, there's no question that he prioritizes these organizations. And I think we need to be skeptical of them and distance ourselves from many of them. And I've been very clear on that.
We're seeing an increasingly aggressive China, People's Republic of China, and I want to distinguish between the people of China and the government of China. We're talking about the government of China here. And it's increasingly adversarial. It is increasingly trying to bend institutions and countries to its will. How do you see that threat, and how would you stand up to China?
So it is a threat, and we have to start playing hardball. We can't do it on our own, so we have to be working with other allies that are of a similar mind, the United States and other countries in Western Europe. We have to stand up to China. I've suggested that we need to have an anti-infiltration task force here in Canada that combines elements of intelligence, the military, and police to really ferret out the influence that we're seeing predominantly from China, but there's also Iran, radical Islamism, and even radical environmental groups. And we need to get to the bottom of, CSIS has come out with reports for decades now talking about communist China influence in Canada. We know about influence on campuses. We know about intellectual property theft. We have to target this, and we have to start making some arrests. When we start doing stuff like that, we can have some bargaining chips to deal with, the two Michaels there that were detained over there. So I think we do need to up the ante. China doesn't respond to friendliness and doesn't respond to, the openness of Justin Trudeau. So we do have to take that very seriously.
Do you think that Justin Trudeau has really dropped the ball on this over the years? Then that's nothing redeeming about his approach to China?
Well, it appears his approach to China is to appease them. It's always funny to see some of my caucus colleagues, like Aaron O'Toole, for example, try to get the Liberals to say the word Taiwan. It's funny how far they bend over to appease China. And it's really unfortunate. Justin Trudeau seems to think that smiles and hugs will solve most world problems, and I don't believe that's the case.
Derek Sloan is one of the Conservative leadership candidates. He is our guest here on And Another Thing as we continue in a series with the candidates. I should mention Dr. Leslyn Lewis has been on.
Yes.
Aaron O'Toole has also agreed to come on. And Peter MacKay big leagued us. So what do you think? Hey, let's stick with this. I know you're...
No, just to say that again.
Peter MacKay big leagued us, but what?
Big leagued us.
Big leagued us, yeah.
Okay, so he's not coming on.
And I'm going to give Derek, yes, that's what it means, Derek a chance to take another swipe at Peter, because Peter's been taking a lot of heat for not showing up at debates and not showing up at certain events. What do you think that says about someone who's running for leader that doesn't want to attend what people would perceive to be very important conversations that need to happen? What do you say about that, Derek?
Well, it seems to be based off a strategy that the more people see Peter, the less they like him. And it sounds funny, but I literally think that's the calculus his campaign is doing, and it's telling.
I want to get back to first the principles just for a second, Derek. And again, thanks for coming on the program. Take us through your decision making on joining the race. I always find it interesting to find out what was going on in a candidate's mind. You know, how they talked it through with their family and with their supporters. Andrew Scheer resigned in December. Tell us how you came to decide that you should be in the race and that you have the support to be in the race.
Well, it kind of goes back a little bit further. I got into politics because of a very grave concern about the direction of the country. I never thought that I would be a politician up until a month or two before I entered the nomination. It wasn't a long-standing goal of mine. I'm a lawyer, but I'm also a small business, former small business owner and founder. Really more of an entrepreneurial mindset. I always thought I would, stay in business and found businesses. I became concerned when I saw that the government was doing more than wasting. They were actively, coming after our freedoms, shutting down legitimate debate. So I got into politics with the mindset of, look, I'm not here for a long career. I will do, if a door opens, I'll walk through it. I will do whatever it takes to promote and progress the conservative movement in Canada. So with that being said, I obviously did not expect Andrew Scheer to resign when he did. But when it happened, it triggered sort of the idea that I would like to take whatever opportunity I could to advance sort of a no apologies conservative approach. And obviously there was a lot of hard thinking and praying, even discussion with my wife. We actually had we had a retreat that was planned. We hadn't been away as a couple for a couple of years, just being involved with the 2019 election and then my nomination race before. So we actually had already had a week planned in Manitoba. We went to a nice little retreat up there, and we just spent the week. I said, listen, this is what I want to do. You don't have to give me your answer now. Let's just, think on it, pray on it. And my wife's the type of person that she doesn't jump right away at things, but she needs some time to think. But once she thinks it through, she's rock solid. And so she had a couple of weeks, and she said, you know what, Derek, I think you should do this, and I'm behind you 100%. And so at that point, I decided to step forward, and the rest is history.
Did you have a chat with your daughters about it, or are they too young at this point to understand what's going on?
Well, we kind of said that Daddy was going to be doing some more campaigning, and they're roughly aware of what that means. That's what I'd been doing anyways for the last couple of years, with leading up to 2019 and then the nomination before that. So they know that Daddy does politics. My little girl, when she's saying grace for dinner, she'll say thank you for Daddy's webinars. So they have some loose vocabulary, but I don't know if they fully get what I'm doing.
Derek, I'm curious to know your thoughts. Maybe share a little bit about. I think it's the most brutal part of any campaigns is the way that people treat individuals, especially ones they don't even know. And I would say you've taken a huge brunt of that. Tony obviously has gone through that. I've gone through that being a candidate. And I don't think people understand to what level politicians are subjected to vitriol, abuse. And
apparently ex-politicians.
Yeah, and ex-politicians, bullying and harassment. But maybe just share a little bit about what it's like, because I look at, I guess it's because our kids go to the same school, so I look at it and I know that I had a 1-year-old, not to go off on my thing here, but when I had a 1-year-old, and I'm kind of glad that she wasn't able to hear or see a lot of what, because I went through a lot in 2015, but I just feel like your kids, is it tough to shield them from it? What do they say? What are your thoughts on it? Because it can get ugly.
Well, thankfully, my kids are not old enough to be on Facebook or Twitter, so they're not. They don't necessarily see some of the nastiness. Obviously, my wife and I have been subject to. You know how it is. I'm sure, Tony. Even with threats, you'll get random threats from people, and some of which are
sure.
more serious than others. And we've gotten our share of those. It is difficult. I'm not the type of guy that needs to look at every comment on social media. I'm very focused on my message. My wife has learned the hard way that you don't necessarily want to look through every comment stream. There's a lot of positives, but a lot of nastiness, and it just speaks to the division that we have in our country right now, and it's a shame.
Derek, Sloan, one of the Conservative leadership candidates. We have him for a couple more minutes. I wanted to get your thoughts, Derek, quickly on the general election, whenever that arises. But let's assume that you win and you are the next Conservative leader. I think one of the biggest problems we have as a party, and Tony may disagree, but I think we've chatted about this, is we have trouble connecting with the average voter because we talk about things that are, in my opinion, are just way, way over people's heads. And I don't say that in a rude way, it's just a reality. I'll give you a perfect example. Pierre Poilievre is a great friend of mine, and I know he's a finance critic, but I think talking about trillions and trillions of debt, it just, nobody can relate to that, and therefore it doesn't resonate with the average voter. So I'm curious, as leader, what are some of the items that you're going to be highlighting or that you think would put us in a position to defeat the Liberals?
Well, we have to talk about real solutions to real problems, and I appreciate the work that we've done in the economy, but we usually have the approach that, well, we'll talk about debt, we'll talk about Liberal corruption, but we won't touch controversy because controversy will harm us. You know, the Liberals traffic in controversy. Everything they do is controversial, and they love to bring things like Bill C-8, which is, you know, in their words, the most progressive law of that type in the world. We can't be afraid to, I mean, if Conservatives can't criticize a bill that the Liberals call the most progressive in the world, then they need to try harder. So
what's Bill C-8 for our audience?
Of course, I'm sorry. Yeah, so Bill C-8 is what the Liberals call a conversion therapy bill. And what it does is it deals with kids who are experiencing gender dysphoria or sexual or with their sexual orientation. We're talking about banning basically counseling, particularly for kids going through gender dysphoria, that would affirm the body that they were born with. So a lot of people don't really understand what's going on, but there's a lot of kids who are going through this gender dysphoria right now, a lot more every year than prior years. It's something that's increasing. It's a social phenomenon. We also know that most kids who go through this will actually grow out of it. And there's different studies, but there's rates as high as 80+% that by the time they reach puberty, they are identifying back with, if they're born a girl, then they identify as a girl. And I think that's good. What the Liberals are saying is that it is entirely legal to have your child take puberty blockers or get gender reassignment surgery, but it is illegal to get some type of counseling that would affirm that child in the body that they're born with. In fact, a parent or a therapist could go to jail for 5 years. Given the stats of kids that grow out of this, I think that's just silly. We've seen the UK do the opposite, where they've said, listen, we're going to ban these sex change operations for kids under 18. That, to me, makes a lot more sense. And the UK is not a country of religious fanatics. So that's actually...
That was the issue that J.K. Rowling got embroiled in, I guess, because she took a strong stand in that regard. Is that right?
That's correct. So J.K. Rowling has said some very interesting things. And I agree with them, frankly. And she's by no means a religious zealot. So, I mean, these are like the critique that J.K. Rowling had is exactly the type of thing that Conservatives could have, but we're often afraid of being, seen as, the Liberals will call us racist and homophobic and all these words anyways. So we might as well have, reasonable critiques of these types of bills and have a conservative alternative. And I think that it's very easy to do that.
And I just want to state for the record, because it is my podcast too, I am in favor of trans rights. I do see the issue pertaining to children and who has influence over them, whether it's parents or the state. So I would take issue with anyone who would remove trans rights for an adult that sees their gender in a different way, perhaps, than that which they were born. But I do see the issue when it pertains to children. So I wanted to state that for my own peace of mind.
You don't want the Twitter trolls to come at you.
Well, no, I don't want people to think that I'm anti-trans rights, because I'm not. I'm pro-trans rights.
Excellent.
So there, we got that out of the way. But can I ask though about cancel culture, because it's very interesting. Like I think 6 months ago, there were people talking about cancel culture, Jordan Peterson as an example. But they were being shouted down. Their views that were saying we can't, we have to have a society where we debate these issues properly. Jordan Peterson was being shouted down for that. Then, just recently, extraordinarily, a group of people from around the world, J.K. Rowling, but also Margaret Atwood, Noam Chomsky, of all people, write this letter saying, look, cancel culture is bad. Let's defeat arguments by having better arguments rather than by silencing people. Are you witnessing this phenomenon as well? Is this something that you're attuned to?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I got into this race. Being in law school several years ago, I saw this firsthand, and I think it really broke out on the university scene first, which is why people like Jordan Peterson were talking about it. But it is mainstream now, and it's interesting. We had a debate last night in BC, and they gave a poll to the audience, and every single riding in BC was represented there. There was thousands of conservatives that were on this debate, and they gave them a list of I think 9 or 10 or 12 issues, all of which were good ones, and they said, what's highest on your priority list? And there was the economy and many other conservative issues. Free speech, believe it or not, got something like 50% as a number one priority. Every other issue was like 5, 6, 7%. So we're talking about the economy got 8 or 9% versus 50% for free speech. So this is a hot button issue right now on the campaign trail. I'm not the only candidate talking about this. I'm certainly very strong on this. I've been speaking about various aspects of cancel culture. One way that I'm unique is I'm talking about dealing with cancel culture and banning on social media platforms, which is very troubling, and we have to address that.
I agree with you. In fact, back in the day, I was asked once when I was a provincial politician, do you believe in freedom of speech? And I said, without any irony at all, I died for it. Maybe there's very few things I died for. My family would be one of them, but freedom of speech would be another. And in that sense, we have to be able to defend it. I've got one more question, Jody. Am I allowed to do it?
Yeah.
All right, one more question for you. Beatles or the Rolling Stones? Where do you stand on that?
I have to go with the Beatles. I have to go with the Beatles.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay, that's okay. And who's your favorite Beatle?
You know what? I always say Paul McCartney.
Okay. Did you know that Ringo Starr turned 80 years old this week?
I didn't know that. No, that's great.
I know that's great, and it makes us all feel very old when Ringo Starr had turned 80. So there you go.
Derek, thanks so much for doing this. We wish you all the best on the rest of the campaign trail. And when you're elected, or if you're elected leader, definitely make sure that you make some time for us.
Well, I won't shadow ban you or ban you, and I appreciate the time that you gave me today.
For sure.
All right, thanks, Derek.
Okay, Derek, take care.
Thank you.